They believed they could probe your destiny without consequence, as if they could peel back the veil of your life and walk away untouched. What they never anticipated was your spirit, your energy, your conscious force, manifesting fully, unmistakably in that very room the moment someone was paid to expose your secrets. You didn't just appear, you arrived with purpose. In that instant, you crossed dimensions to claim what was yours, sending a message that could never be forgotten. The reader's hands trembled. Her breath caught. This wasn't mere interference. This was spiritual dominion. You had arrived not to observe, but to enforce, to draw a line no one would dare cross again. Your destiny is not for sale, not to be glimpsed, touched, or taken without your will. And now they know. The air in the apartment hung heavy with incense, thick and choking. Cards lay fanned out over a velvet cloth, reflecting a dull amber glow from the desk lamp. The reader, seasoned by years of peering into futures, felt the shift the moment the door opened. Her client walked in, clutching a photograph, your photograph, and placed it on the table with trembling urgency. "I need to know everything about this person's future," the client demanded. The reader hesitated, her fingers hovered above the image. A deep warning stirred at the edges of her mind, quiet but insistent. She silenced it. Triple pay meant triple focus. She shuffled the cards with steady hands, or tried to. The first card landed, and the room changed. Time paused. The air turned icy. The incense smoke halted mid-rise, then reversed, spinning downward in tight, impossible spirals around the photo. "He is here," the reader whispered, not to anyone, but because her body demanded it. The client froze. "Who's here?" No answer came. The veil between worlds had disintegrated. Shadows on the wall moved without flame. Crystals buzzed with unspent panic. Protection stones dulled to inert silence. And her spirit guides, her lifelong allies, were gone, fled without warning. You had stepped in, not as a name on a photograph, not as a passive energy waiting to be interpreted. You arrived whole, alert, aware, and watching. You judged with sovereign authority. The reader pressed her palms to the table, her 2 decades of spiritual experience unraveling before your presence. This was not visitation. This was manifestation. You weren't a guest in that space. You were the space. You were the force. You were the one that power itself respected. And in that moment, everyone in the room understood. Some destinies are guarded by more than fate. Some are protected by the unshakable will of the one who owns them. And yours is untouchable. Meanwhile, the client shifted uncomfortably in their seat, knowing just how many obstacles they'd faced to get this far. They had gone to considerable lengths to arrange this reading. 5 different psychics had refused outright when your name was mentioned, and 2 more had initially agreed, only to call back with sudden schedule conflicts. This reader was the 8th attempt, the most expensive, the most desperate option. The client had spent weeks searching, making endless calls, and following every recommendation. Each rejection only fueled their obsession, making you even more mysterious and unreachable. They were driven by unfinished business and unresolved feelings. Maybe a jealous ex who couldn't let go. Maybe a competitor eaten up by envy. Or someone who smiled to your face while secretly plotting against you. It could even be family members with expectations you refused to meet, or an employer left behind in your wake. Their specific reasons didn't matter. What mattered was their desperation. The darkness driving them revealed everything about their character. The lengths they went to in order to know your future, your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, spoke volumes about their intent. They craved control over what was never meant to be controlled, seeking power over a force that refused to be diminished. To them, knowledge was power, and specifically knowledge of your life. Paying 3 months' salary for this reading seemed a small price to uncover your secrets. They were willing to mortgage their own future security for the promise of present advantage, sacrificing stability just for a sense of control. They believed themselves clever, thinking they could pull strings from a safe distance, as if this were the spiritual equivalent of hacking into someone's private files. A quick, detached transaction. A business arrangement with a spiritual mercenary. They saw no connection to the consequences, took no responsibility for the invasion. What they failed to realize was that they hadn't simply hired someone to hack your spiritual data or commissioned a mystical surveillance operation. In their desperation, they had unwittingly opened a direct connection to you, building a bridge between worlds and sending an invitation that you accepted. The client leaned forward, oblivious to the catastrophic mistake they had just made. "Why did it get so cold in here? Is something wrong?" they asked. But the reader's eyes never left the spiraling smoke above your photograph. "You didn't tell me who this person really is. I don't understand. You should have told me." Professional readers develop instincts, a sixth sense for danger before it arrives. From the beginning, this reader had felt the warning signs. The cards were unusually heavy, resistant in her hands, and the pendulum that had hung perfectly still all evening began to swing wildly the moment your photograph hit the table. Her spirit guides, usually chattering with insights, fell silent, a silence that was itself a blaring alarm. Before she even touched the cards, a pressure built in her chest, a physical manifestation of spiritual resistance. "Don't do this." The message was clear, though unspoken. This isn't someone you read without permission, interfere with, or touch uninvited. Still, the promise of triple payment, the chance to impress a new client, and professional pride made the risk seem justifiable. But when her fingers touched the first card and placed it on the table, the tower appeared. Sudden destruction, catastrophic change. The moment the card touched velvet, everything shifted. Reality bent, the boundaries between worlds thinned to nothing, and the apartment no longer felt like her sanctuary. Her own actions had violated her space, opening a door without understanding what stood on the other side. Most spiritual presences arrive gently. Subtle impressions, a shift in temperature, a faint scent, or a whisper of a message. Spiritual visitors typically enter with deference, respecting boundaries, waiting for acknowledgement or permission, careful not to overwhelm. They know their place in the hierarchy of realms, not you. The moment your name was spoken over your image, you arrived with absolute authority. No gentle transition, no gradual manifestation. One moment you were absent, the next fully present. One moment separate, the next entirely integrated into the space. The energy in the room didn't just shift, it transformed, becoming electric, heavy, and charged with immense potential. The space between particles compressed. The distance between realms collapsed. And what was once an ordinary apartment became a threshold between worlds. The reader gasped, feeling the undeniable presence of another consciousness pressing not just against, but fully overwhelming her mind, flooding her perception and breaking down her psychic defenses. Her mental shield shattered in an instant. You did not ask for permission, did not wait to be invited, did not acknowledge her authority in her own space. You weren't following the rules of spiritual visitation. You simply claimed the territory, establishing dominance without effort, transforming her sanctuary into your domain with nothing but your presence. The energy became so concentrated, so focused and intense, it felt almost tangible. Light bent strangely, shadows formed where nothing should have blocked them, and a silent demand vibrated through the room. "Who called me?" Your energy pulsed with undeniable demand, the words unspoken but fully understood, resonating in their bones and echoing in their blood. The call for accountability rang through the space, not a suggestion or a whisper, but a command that rattled the very windows, a force that pressed against the walls and bent material reality to your immaterial will. The reader's hands shook violently, scattering the cards across the table. The tower card landed face up at the client's feet, a personal message. The judgment card fell directly onto your photograph, a sign that could not be dismissed as coincidence. The rest of the deck flew like startled birds, some cards standing on edge. The client pushed back in their chair, their eyes darting around the room, desperately searching for any visible explanation for what was happening. The client's terror grew as they frantically searched for a physical explanation for what was clearly a metaphysical event. Their rational minds struggled to categorize the uncategorizable, and each word they spoke was edged with mounting panic. All their confidence dissolved. Their illusion of control disappeared, and the plan they'd arrived with was obliterated by a force beyond comprehension. Arrogance crumbled, replaced by a raw, primal fear of the unknown. The reader found herself unable to answer, her throat constricting, breath shallow and quick. 20 years of spiritual practice rendered useless in an instant. Decades of experience had provided no preparation, no protection, no precedent for what was happening. Her professional poise shattered. She faced something beyond anything she had ever known or controlled. Quick pause, family. If this message resonates with your soul and you'd like to support this sacred work, you can buy me a coffee. It keeps this space alive with truth, light, and divine clarity. The link is in the description. And if you're here, drop the number 88 in the comments. Now let's continue. This is dedicated to those who never need recognition, never ask for permission, who simply exist in their power. Here's to you, the vanguard, the first to arrive. Behind you came many others, generations of ancestors moving in silent formation, spirit guides, ancient energies aligned with your soul's journey, and protectors, fierce, vigilant forces dedicated to your spiritual safety. They entered like a divine army, disciplined, coordinated, and overwhelming. The reader felt the pressure building with each new presence, and even the spiritually untrained client sensed the crowding of unseen forces. The small apartment could barely contain the gathering energy. The walls themselves seemed to expand and contract with every new arrival, pictures tilting, books vibrating, the crystal in the window spinning and casting frantic rainbows across the room. "There are so many," the reader whispered in awe, her words trembling. "So many of them." The client's face drained of color, barely able to process the magnitude of what was happening. The reader couldn't find the words to describe the spiritual court that had assembled for you. Her sacred space was no longer hers. The client had lost all control. Their carefully constructed plan had collapsed. They had come seeking your vulnerabilities and your future, expecting to be in the seat of power, asking questions, gaining advantage. But the reversal was so complete, so swift, that they barely recognized the shift. The cards on the table rearranged themselves, not for you, but for them, your energy shining like a spotlight, not being examined, but examining, not being questioned, but questioning. Suddenly, the client felt utterly exposed. Every calculation, every secret grudge, every act of sabotage laid bare beneath your gaze. Sweat beaded on their forehead, and their heart hammered against their ribs. "Make it stop," they pleaded, their voice cracking. The reader shook her head, barely able to speak. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't? This is your place, your session." But the reader's voice trembled with certainty. "Not anymore. This isn't my reading now." The client's secret surfaced against their will, every hidden intention exposed. They came to uncover your future, but instead their own past was revealed. Every manipulative moment, every jealous thought, every act of sabotage reflected back with perfect clarity. Only then did they realize the scale of their miscalculation. The reading ended abruptly, your energy withdrawing, not banished, but leaving by its own choice. The client fled, not even paying the balance they owed, and the reader was left alone in her apartment, hands still trembling hours later. Something deep inside her felt broken. The carefully nurtured connection to her intuition damaged. Her trust in her spiritual guides, her confidence in her abilities, shattered. In the days that followed, her readings fell apart. The cards yielded only nonsense. Her predictions missed the mark, and insights evaporated. Clients noticed. Bookings declined. Her reputation suffered, and her dreams were haunted by the memory of your overwhelming, undeniable presence. She had crossed a spiritual boundary that should have never been breached, attempting to peer into the protected destiny of someone far beyond her authority to read. The consequences did not stop at mere professional setbacks. Soon her daily life was plagued with a series of unusual mishaps. Electronics in her home inexplicably malfunctioned. Her phone would randomly shut off, computers glitched without warning, and appliances would fail at the worst. Possible moments. Pipes in her apartment burst unexpectedly, leaving her dealing with water damage and mounting repair bills. Everyday objects like her keys would vanish, only to reappear in strange places, unsettling her sense of safety. None of these events were catastrophic in isolation, but they created a persistent and growing sense that her life had slipped out of alignment. It was as if a subtle, invisible force was making itself known, reminding her that some spiritual mistakes cannot be undone. Certain boundaries, once crossed, permanently alter the course of your path. The weight of what she had done that grew heavier with each passing day. She considered abandoning her spiritual practice entirely. Perhaps it was safer to step away, to close the door on this world she no longer felt at home in. Maybe the universe was sending her a clear message. Some doors should remain closed, some energies untouched, some people unread. The client who had arranged the fateful reading did not escape consequences either. They had come to the reader seeking leverage over you, control, advantage, a secret weapon. Instead, they left with something else entirely. The Tower card that had appeared so dramatically was never meant for you, but for them, signifying destruction, upheaval, and the collapse of false structures. Within days, the client's carefully constructed life began to unravel. The promotion they had counted on was unexpectedly awarded to someone else. A relationship they treasured was suddenly beset by mistrust and tension. Financial stability eroded as unexpected expenses mounted. Appliances broke, investments tanked, bills piled up. Nothing seemed to go right. Every plan unraveled. Every step forward met with resistance. Though they tried to explain these setbacks away as bad luck or coincidence, deep down they sensed the truth. Each obstacle carried the same chilling energy signature they'd felt that night in the reader's apartment. Each disappointment felt intentional, directed, impersonal, not as revenge, but as a fundamental balancing of cosmic scales. Spiritual debt was being collected. They had tried to use the universe as a weapon against you, but instead had forged the instrument of their own undoing. The universe has laws, and attempting to interfere with someone's protected destiny carries a cost, one they were now paying with interest. Each night they dreamed of cards turning on their own, of incense smoke spiraling impossibly, of unseen eyes watching, of judgment passed with no possibility of appeal. Experienced spiritual workers understand the hierarchy of souls. Most people move through life with a basic level of spiritual protection, like a natural immune system. Others, old souls, empaths, natural psychics, carry stronger shields. But then there are the chosen ones, souls with a specific mission, destinies aligned with universal forces and protected at levels beyond ordinary comprehension. The reader, for all her experience, had encountered your kind before and should have recognized the signs. The client, however, never stood a chance of understanding. Spiritual ignorance offers no protection. Trying to read a chosen one without their consent is like trying to hack into a top-secret government database or break into a fortified vault. The protections do not merely keep intruder out. They catch them in the act. The response is not random or accidental. It is the spiritual equivalent of an immune reaction, precise, efficient, and overwhelming. Chosen ones don't even need to consciously defend themselves. The universe does it for them automatically. The laws of spiritual sovereignty are absolute and non-negotiable. The reader knew better, nor should have. While the client learned the hard way that some energies are never meant to be touched, some destinies are not to be interfered with, and some people are simply untouchable. Your appearance in that reading wasn't just a fleeting intrusion. You left behind a spiritual signature, a mark the reader sensed immediately, an energetic residue that no amount of sage, salt, or cleansing ritual could remove. The client carried it too, invisible to the untrained eye but unmistakable to anyone with spiritual sight. It wasn't a curse, not exactly, but a form of evidence, a spiritual fingerprint left at the scene of their transgression. That mark changed how the universe interacted with them. Energy that once flowed freely now stagnated. Luck that once favored them turned, and protection they relied on dissolved. The reader, desperate to restore balance, tried every cleansing ritual, energy healing, and spiritual bath she knew, but nothing could erase what had been done. The client sought help from other psychics, hoping for a solution. Every one of them saw the same problem, an energy signature that screamed, "Someone is watching you." Each new psychic phrased it differently, but the meaning was always the same. Why is everything going wrong? The client demanded. One psychic, recognizing the unmistakable mark, met their eyes with sudden understanding. You tried to read someone you shouldn't have, she replied. No further explanation needed. The mark wasn't punishment. It was consequence. It wasn't vengeance. It was balance. And while it wasn't permanent, it would last long enough for lessons to be learned, for debts to be paid, for the universe to restore the harmony they had tried to disrupt. News of the incident spread quickly within spiritual circles, not as gossip, but through dreams, sudden flashes of insight, and cards repeatedly delivering the same warning message. The reader would never speak your name again, not even in her own mind, for fear of attracting your presence once more. But other sensitives picked up on the story. Visions, impressions, and warnings about a chosen one who fiercely defended their sovereignty, who appeared without invitation and turned the tables on anyone who tried to exploit them. Your reputation grew quietly, without your effort or knowledge. Psychics began declining readings about you, refusing payment no matter how high. I don't read certain energies, they would say carefully and respectfully, understanding now that some souls are beyond reach. It's not safe. I can't look at that person's future. I'm sorry. Some paths are protected. I won't interfere. These words became a quiet mantra among the spiritual community. Increasingly, those who practice the mystical arts, psychics, healers, intuitives, found themselves pausing when your name arose, a hush falling over even the boldest circles. The growing consensus was clear. Your destiny was shielded by a force no one dared to challenge. It was as if a great invisible hand had drawn a boundary in the ether, marking your soul as off-limits, wrapped in a protection that did not need to be explained, only respected. The effect rippled outward, reaching even those who had never met you, who only heard whispers of your presence. Your adversaries, once confident in their spiritual resources, now discovered themselves standing alone. The mentors, practitioners, or allies they once turned to for guidance began to decline their requests or grew silent and evasive, unwilling to get involved. The familiar pathways of spiritual insight and support shut down one by one, until your enemies found themselves spiritually exiled, cut off from the very intelligence and power they once took for granted. Some tried to rationalize the change, telling themselves it was coincidence, paranoia, or just a run of bad luck. But the truth gnawed at them beneath the surface. The fear spread not through dramatic confrontation or open warning, but through a subtle collective knowing, a chilling intuition that your energy was simply not to be crossed. Even the skeptics, those who scoffed at the idea of spiritual law or unseen boundaries, found themselves hesitating. When your name appeared in conversation or crossed their minds, a strange heaviness set in, a quiet, persistent discomfort that defied logic. They felt the weight of invisible eyes, the sense of stepping over a line that should not be crossed. And almost always they backed away, uncertain why, but knowing with absolute clarity that the risk was real. Your enemies, frozen in this state of uncertainty, could no longer strategize against you. They found themselves unable to see your next move, unable to anticipate or prepare, unable to gather the intelligence they once relied on to stay a step ahead. They were stuck, immobilized by the very energies they had tried to manipulate, trapped in the aftermath of their own spiritual trespass. Meanwhile, you advanced steadily, undeterred by their interference, your path cleared by the cosmic justice that governed your journey. What occurred in that fateful reading wasn't just a strange fluke or a moment of chaos. It was the universe rendering its verdict for you. It became undeniable proof that you are not like the others. Your protection is woven into the fabric of your being, part of a larger design that few can comprehend. When your spiritual privacy was invaded, you didn't just repel the attack. You turned the encounter on its head. You didn't simply defend your sacred ground. You transformed it into a proving ground, a place where your authority was demonstrated beyond question. The battlefield was not one of violence, but of presence and energy. You seized control, reversing the direction of the spiritual gaze until those who sought to pry into your life became the subjects of their own intentions. Their secrets, motivations, and hidden plans were exposed. reflected back to them with unfiltered clarity. The lesson was unmistakable. Those who dare to violate the sovereignty of a protected soul become cautionary tales, examples for all who would contemplate such a breach in the future. This response from the universe wasn't something you had to ask for or force. It was already there, encoded in your essence. Your soul's authority is self-evident, resonating on frequencies beyond human language or ordinary intuition. To those who approach you with respect, honoring your energetic boundaries, you are a source of inspiration, strength, and generosity. For those who ignore warnings and force their way into your sacred space, the consequences are swift, inescapable, and humbling. They learn that your boundaries are not walls of ego, but pillars of cosmic law. Your energy does not move through the world seeking to punish. It is not a force that hunts down transgressors or seeks vengeance. Instead, it waits quietly, responding only when challenged, rising only when provoked. But when it does, it restores balance with an authority that cannot be contested. The order you carry is not imposed, but natural. The protection you receive is not granted out of favoritism, but out of universal necessity. No one, regardless of their cunning, can access what is meant for you and you alone. No outside force can alter the script already written into your destiny. What the universe has declared as yours cannot be stolen, manipulated, or redirected. The night of the reading, with all its spiritual upheaval, remains imprinted in the memories of everyone who witnessed or felt its reverberations. The reader, once so confident, is now haunted by the moment she crossed the invisible line, her practice all but abandoned as she tries to rebuild her shattered trust. The client, whose ambitions turned to dust, continues to stumble through a life now marked by instability, misfortune, and the inescapable feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The spiritual community, sensitive to shifts in the energy landscape, quietly recognizes your presence as a new kind of power, one that stands outside their influence. All these players in the story now share a deeper understanding. You exist beyond unauthorized access. Your journey unfolds on its own schedule, unaffected by the desires or manipulations of others. Your destiny is not up for debate, not open for revision by any hand, but your own and those higher powers that watch over you. The reader will never forget the overwhelming sense of presence that filled her sacred space. The client will never regain the false sense of control they once cherished. And you will keep moving forward, often unaware of just how many battles have been won for you in the unseen realms. You may not see every defense mounted on your behalf, but your soul recognizes the truth. You exist in both the physical and spiritual dimensions, a force that brings reckoning when necessary, but always protected, always sovereign, always untouchable. The evidence is found in the aftermath. Lives changed, reputations shifted, energies realigned. The spiritual world bears witness to your authority and whispers your story as a reminder. You cannot be touched without your explicit permission. You cannot be seen without your conscious consent. You cannot be influenced, derailed, or overtaken against your will. Your path is yours alone. Your destiny, an exclusive contract between your soul and the divine. This reality is not born of pride, ego, or imagined specialness, but the operation of a greater order, one that exists to maintain balance in the universe. When they tried to spy on your future, they ran into the wall of cosmic law. When they attempted to cross your boundaries, they met with the unmovable force of your soul's authority. In the end, they learned a universal principle. Some souls answer only to higher authorities. Some doors remain closed for a reason. And some people, by the very nature of their destiny, simply cannot be touched, no matter how determined others may be. And so your legend grows, not through effort or ambition, but through the natural unfolding of spiritual law. Your energy continues to move silently, unchallenged, watched over by powers greater than any human force. Those who once sought to use you as a means to their own ends now serve as warnings. And the world, both seen and unseen, remembers the day they tried to access the untouchable and found themselves forever changed. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our